There's nothing really that goes to waste on a pig. So we use all the bones to go into sauces and the trotters, and we make different types of jus and terrines and sausages and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, the pig for us is king because it's the best yield.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Learning, discovery, and connection can be a powerful driving force. Falling into a career as a butcher in a small border town on the Murray River, Troy Wheeler soon yearned for a greater understanding of where produce comes from. Eager for a greater understanding of his craft, he made the move to Melbourne, and after rising the ranks at one of the city's best butchers, he embarked on a journey with renowned chef Andrew McConnell to create one of Australia's most bespoke butchers, focusing on the best quality heritage meats. Troy, not all that long ago, butchers started to disappear and the supermarkets took over, but you've been a part of the rebirth of fine local butchers. What's been the success of them?
I think there has been, you're right. I think there's definitely been a resurgence in the local butcher. I think it was like popularized quite a few years ago, where chefs were transitioning into butchery, inquisitive about wanting to know more about it, to learn more in their trade, and in turn, I think has helped like repopularize the butchery trade in general and put it into the spotlight.
You've built an amazing career, and what you do at Meatsmith is something that we can get into at some stage, but take us back to when you were young. When did you first get interested in food?
So I think my story is probably fairly traditional in regards to, you know, a butcher and how they evolve into the trade. You know, when I was pretty young, I wasn't doing so well at school and didn't really know what I wanted to do as like a profession. And I kind of fell into butchery. So I left school pretty young, and I used to go to the butcher shop with my mum, and it would seem like a fun place to work. You know, the guys behind the counter were always joking around and, you know, making a bit of fun and quite jovial, and I never really knew what I wanted to do. So I'm like, you know, I'd ask them would they be interested in putting an apprentice on, and at that time they didn't, and I went off and worked a few different jobs. And where I'm from, up on the Murray River, it's a wood cutting industry, and there's like market gardens and all sorts of stuff. So I just worked randomly for a year or so in different jobs, and persisted and kept asking the guys whether they'd be still interested in putting an apprentice on, and finally they gave in to me and gave me a job. And from there, I sort of it wasn't really a passion at that stage, I don't think. It was just like a job that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I didn't mind getting my hands dirty and doing all the dirty jobs that come with being an apprentice. And it really snowballed from there. I sort of developed a real passion, and sort of led me to Melbourne.
Well, tell us about that apprenticeship that you did at Barham Meats. What were some of the dirty jobs that you had to do as an apprentice? Do you have any memories of that time?
I think it was like it was an extremely traditional butcher shop. So like all we did was break bodies of beef and pigs and lambs, and we did a little bit of small good stuff. So like we made our own frankfurts and cooked corned beef and things like that. So I think, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff was good, but like, you know, I think the dirty jobs and the hard jobs were, you know, cleaning out the old pickle tubs that have been sitting around with like blood brine for a couple of weeks that sits at 0 degrees, and cleaning out the old copper cookers that we've got like just layers and layers of fat on them from multiple cooks, and especially in the depths of summer up there, it gets to high 30 degrees for multiple weeks in a row, and so it's a pretty gross job.
You moved to Melbourne at a young age. What triggered that, and what was it like moving to Melbourne after growing up on the Murray?
Yeah, well, I guess it was, I started developing a real passion for butchery. It stemmed from, we used to do what we called like private bodies, and that was, cattle and sheep and pigs from local farmers would get their livestock killed, and we would process them for them to have at home for their families. And what I noticed is like we would buy our livestock from the abattoirs, and it would consistently come the same, and I never really knew what the origin of that stuff was. And doing the private bodies for all of these local farmers, you could identify with them that their produce was, an Angus cattle or like a Berkshire pig or something, and you knew that it was grown at that person's farm, and you knew why it was good or why it was bad, and you could identify, its traceability. And it got me really inquisitive about why is this so good, and why does it come from there? Compared to where we get our stuff from, which comes from somewhere else. And then it sort of led me to okay, I really want to know more about our trade, and, the diversity in our trade in regards to things that we make for our consumers. And it just got me really involved in the industry. And I felt at the time, when I was in Barron Meats, and I'd got to a point where I could learn as much as I could, and I couldn't get all of the answers that I was looking for. So, as alongside a passion for live music and stuff, I thought moving to Melbourne and getting a job in Melbourne was the next best step for me.
And you ended up at a famous butchery and spent over a decade there. Tell us about how you landed your first job in Melbourne and what it led to.
Yeah, so it wasn't where I was meant to be working. So I had lined up a job. I had some friends that were friends of a butcher in the Prahran market, and I had lined up a job to work there. So there was a transition period of a couple of months where the guys that I work for at Barron Meats, I made sure that they went on their holidays and all that kind of stuff, because it was a small little butcher shop and there was only 3 of us there. And I'd been in communication with this place, and I had, saying that I'm coming down at this date, and if I'm all good to start, and they're like, yeah, no worries, turn up, it'll be right. And so I finished my job in Barham, and I thought I'll drive to Melbourne and make sure everything's fine, and I'll call in on a Saturday morning and make sure I'm good to go for Monday. And I turned up at this butcher shop on the Saturday, and the guys turned around and told me, I don't have a job for you. He's like, look, I'm sorry, I don't have any work. I can't help you out. So So I jumped back in the car, and with my tail between my legs, and drove all the way back to the country. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I have to go back and ask for my job, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I just felt all embarrassed, and when I jumped back into the car, before I drove back, and all those things were going through my head, I knew of the butcher shop, Peter Boucher's, just up the road from where the Prahran market is on Malvern Road in Hawkesburn Village. So I thought, maybe I'll just drive up there and I'll introduce myself and see if they've got any work going. And so I called in. It was a Saturday morning. The shop was heaving. There's people everywhere. I waited at the back of the shop for 25 minutes to get Peter's attention, to say, hey, do you have any work? And finally he made his way to me, and I'm like, my name's Troy, and just wondering if you have any work. I'm a butcher from the country. And he's like, look, I don't have any work for you. Sorry, mate. Leave your details and maybe I'll get in contact with you. Yes, and so same story. I went back to the country, tail between my legs, uh, and it was on the Monday morning. I was like washing my car on the front lawn or something, and I got a phone call from Peter, and he's like, "Oh, I've been thinking about you over the weekend." He's like, "How about you start tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've driven back to the country. It's like 3.5 hours away." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Nah, stuff it. I'll be there." So I packed up the car, left, and started work the next morning at 5:30 in the morning, and the rest was history.
How different was it working in Peter Boucher's butcher compared to what you had been used to?
Extremely different, yeah. So I'd come from a very, very traditional butcher shop in the country town to working with someone like Peter, who was like extremely progressive and was doing all of these types of value-added products and products in general that I'd never seen before. Fresh bobby veal and wagyu beef and all those kinds of things that I'd never really been exposed to. It was a real shock, and I loved it. It just reinvigorated all of that stuff that I was really searching for.
What sort of connection did you start to form with producers that were supplying the market there?
Yeah, so I guess because I was exposed to all these different things, and we had producers all the time coming in and looking for us to use their product to sell in the store. We got to see some amazing things. It was like the early days of Blackmore Wagyu beef when they were getting off the ground. We used to do a lot of work with people like them. Our pork producer that I use now, Katie Brown from Glen Eyrie Rare Breed Farms, I met while I was working with Peter. It was, yeah, there's just incredible stuff. It was it was such a new world to me.
You spent over a decade there and rose the ranks to managing the retail and wholesale operations of the store. What were the challenges involved in that compared to, being on the knives?
Yeah, well, my role was still extremely hands-on. I wasn't really like a traditional manager in the sense of, looking after finances and having a financial responsibility and all those types of things. My job was probably more so involved in being Peter's right-hand man and executing any of his ideas and things that he wanted to see implemented into the business. I would do, all the product development. So if we weren't balancing the carcasses out and we needed to find a home for, different cuts that we weren't selling and we needed to turn it into a product line that was appealing to our consumers, then, they're the things that I'd be doing. And I reckon that the challenges, I guess, is probably, I don't know. It's we dealt with we had a lot of staff over the years. We built a small goods facility in Moorabbin at the time when I was there, and trying to find people that were aligned with your vision, I guess, was really difficult. There's lots of butchers, I guess, that work in the industry that they don't really have the same. They're not motivated the same as what we were. So trying to get your message across to people like that and trying to execute it was really hard.
You just mentioned the small goods facility that you built during that time that you were there. What's important in making great small goods?
Well, obviously product and ingredients, making sure you're starting with the best pork you can. The fresh ingredients, technique. I think we, over the years, we're extremely lucky to have lots of really good young charcutiers and small goodsmen that came from Germany and out of France, work in the business. And along that time, we sort of we developed a program and we picked up techniques along the way to really improve the products that we were making.
Meatsmith is your co-owner with one of Australia's most well-known and influential chefs, Andrew McConnell. Tell us about how the idea came about.
Well, it sort of came about while I was working with Peter. I met Andrew through the industry. I was being a huge fan of Andrew's restaurants and his food, and I sort of met him through eating his restaurants. And he used to shop at the store in Hawkesbury Village. And at the time, he was building they'd taken over the Builders Arms Hotel and they were renovating it, and they'd implemented a dry aged meat room and a dry aged meat program as like a feature on the menu. And he asked me to come and have a look. He's like, "Oh, would you mind coming to have a look and checking out what we're doing? Maybe give us a few pointers." And I'm, yeah, no worries, I'll come along. So I went along and he was showing me what they were doing, and I gave a few pointers about a few things they could do to change the way they were portioning things and to minimize the waste and stuff that they were having. And it kind of evolved into me working there after hours to start portioning dry age and making products out of what would deem to be waste, and setting up a program that was help educate and teach the chefs to utilize product more and generate less waste. And I guess from there it's sort of like that went on. I was there for about a year or so, and then from there the conversation started. Well, how about we open our own butcher shop and we can do all of these amazing things and create a space that's that encapsulates all the things that we love about food, and create a place where you can go and get all the things that you need to create a good meal. And I guess for me, not only was it important that it was accessible, that it wasn't just a place that was a special occasion place. It was somewhere that you could come every day to get your protein or your small grocery items or whatever it may be, to have that meal, whether it's like a chicken schnitzel for a weeknight meal with a salad, or whether it's like a nice big dry aged ribeye for a nice dinner with friends and family.
Historically, we're always told to ask the butcher how to cook a certain cut when they're buying meat from a butcher. What sort of role do you play in that discussion with consumers, given that you're not a chef, and how important is good butchery in the overall eating experience?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. And I think that's something that we've focused on in particular, that butchers have a responsibility to be a competent cook and have good cooking knowledge, because our consumers are going to restaurants and eating these amazing meals, and they're going home and they're trying to replicate it. So if the butcher isn't competent in his ability to cook and to know what cuts and how to apply them to different cooking methods, he's not going to be able to help the modern consumer, because they're trying to broaden their repertoire and their cooking skills, and it's important that you give them the right advice.
You mentioned Katie Brown and the connection that you had way back before Meatsmith. Tell us about what they produce and why you use their pigs.
Yeah, so Katie is quite unique in what she does. She has Glen Eyrie Rare Breed Farm, and her business is mostly through breed conservation. So we work with her in regards to the 9 breeds that exist on the rare breeds list. And what we do is we don't focus too much on each particular breed, but whatever particular breed at the time, she needs to help rebuild up those stock numbers, we'll take them and then sell them as our normal pork that we sell in our stores. So there's breeds like large white, landrace, Durocs, Hampshires, Berkshires, Tamworths, Wessex saddlebacks, large blacks, and Welshes that all exist in Australia that are not commonly known. So, like, obviously, we know a lot about Berkshires. We know a bit about Wessex saddlebacks because I think they're celebrated a bit more in restaurants, and we hear more about those types of breeds. But like, we focus on things like Durocs and Tamworths, where our customers will come back and they'll be like, why I had this pork chop last night and it was incredible. The fat was so delicious and moorish, and why was that? And we can say that, well, this was a Tamworth pig, which you might not have tried before, and these are its characteristics. Which builds breed awareness, and in turn helps Katie breed these livestock numbers up and keep them off the endangered list.
How different are the breeds from a butchering and eating perspective? Do you have an example of two that are quite different?
Yeah, well, like Tamworth, for example. So Tamworth is like really shallow in its eye muscle form, but has quite a large back fat, and they're quite tall and deep in the midsection, versus a large black is quite stocky across the shoulders, has a large eye muscle, and not as much of a back fat composition. So, you will get a larger portion, like a larger, pork chop or eye loin or something out of a large black, or your Tamworth would be really small. And then the fibers slightly changed. So the Tamworth will be like quite soft, and like that back fat is like really delicious and like waxy like in texture. And then the large black is more of that meaty, slightly more textural sort of flavour.
From a butcher and consumer point of view, how versatile is a whole pig?
Oh, extremely. It's there's nothing really that goes to waste on a pig, and that's the other thing that we do at Meatsmith in general. We have a small goods program and a charcuterie program and a commercial kitchen as a part of our Fitzroy store, and we utilise everything, so nothing goes to waste. So we use all the bones to go into sauces and the trotters, and we make different types of jus and terrines and sausages and all sorts of stuff. So, the pig for us is king because it's the best yield.
With the obligation on butchers to know a bit about cooking, to understand cuts, to share that with consumers, do you have particular cuts that you like to cook, and can you tell us a bit about dishes that you cook at home?
Yeah. I guess I'm a little bit experimental at home. Like, I often, going back to what we said before about, important butchers having cooking knowledge, I'm always trying to build off that. Experimenting and trying new techniques and, things that I might have eaten in a restaurant, trying to replicate that or whatever that might be. So, my wife and kids often during the week get to eat weird and wonderful things that I'm trying to experiment with. My kids don't like it too much.
Is there a particular cut of the pig that you like to cook?
Yeah, for me, it's probably that rack end chop with all its trimmings left on. Right up into the shoulder where the cap sort of separate is like on top of that eye muscle. So you get that good texture of the rib meat and the eye muscle and nice big layer of fat, and keep the skin on and score it up so you get like crispy bits and chewy bits. I'm a big fan of texture. Like I'm not a huge fan of like fillets and things like that that are really soft. I like something that I can sort of eat and enjoy.
Bakers will often talk about baking being therapeutic. Do you have a similar feeling with butchery?
Yeah, totally. I really do. I guess I'm like going through, and whether it is something mundane like cutting steaks for display in the stores, or burning out lamb shoulders or pork shoulders. Um, I enjoy all of it, and I sort of strive to each time I do it to make sure I'm doing it properly, and that I can build on being better each time I do it. That the cuts are correct and everything is done perfectly.
Meatsmith has really changed the conversation and interaction between butchers and consumers and you've got the wine element and sort of the ultimate sort of meal solutions as well. What is it that you love about what you've created there?
I love that we're accessible to all forms of people, and like whether you are a um, busy couple or individual that lives in inner city Melbourne, and you have a busy time consuming job, that we still have something for you. You can call past in the afternoon and you can grab a ready-made meal that we've prepared in-house that is just as delicious as what you could get in a restaurant. So like a beautiful coq au vin that has got like caramelized chicken legs with a really nice double chicken reduction with like fresh herbs and stuff in it. It's not overly manufactured, um, and in the same context, you can have someone on their day off that has all day that can come in and get a really great bottle of Barolo and get some beef cheeks and braise some beef cheeks for like that delicious meal at the end of the day.
With good butchery being so important to the overall eating experience, what advice would you have for smaller food service operators who may not have butchery experience at the highest level?
Well, I think, yeah, like rely on your butcher giving you the right information. Like, I think that conversation around what they need it for, how they want to use it. Obviously, price point's a factor for a lot of restaurants, that they need to meet a certain food costs. So they might be going down the wrong path of trying to use an eye fillet when they should be using shoulder or something. Like just that communication and opening up that conversation around what they need it for, and the butcher should be able to help you.
The notion of nose to tail eating is one that's really come to the fore over the last decade or two, but understanding how to use all of the whole pig is a different thing altogether. But do you have any tips or secrets in how to break down a whole pig and to get the most out of it?
I don't know whether they're secrets. It's probably an age-old art that's been happening for. I think making sure that you're, like the I guess the tips is like knowing what application applies to which part of the pig. So your shoulders and your head, will always apply to like a really slow cooking method, as well as your bellies. And really they're best suited for like your sausages and all those, and terrines and things. They've got the right intermuscular fat and connective tissue for that application. And your loins and the rumps and the legs are a leaner cut with shorter fibers, so they're quicker cooking and used for applications like curing, to make bacon, or whether it's like cured lonza or prosciuttos or whatever that may be, or like traditional ham. So I think just making sure that the cuts that you have, you're using them for the right application so you get the best out of them.
You grew up in a small country town and now one of Australia's most renowned butchers. How has butchery changed your life?
Well, it hasn't really. I still get up and go to work at 4:00 every morning. I get home, not too late now that I've got a couple of small kids, but and it's still 6 days a week that I'm doing it, and I've been doing that since I was like 17. So uh, my job is very much been, and being a butcher has very much been everything that I've done forever, and it's always been a priority. So and then starting a business with Andrew, the same thing just keeps continuing, whether I get up every single morning and you go to work and do what I love, and I think nothing's changed in the past 20 plus years, and I'm not tired of it now, so I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Well, Troy, we've loved having you on the Crackling today to hear your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Huck.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.